scholars of history as the double genocide theory, that like the USSR also did a genocide, and actually their genocides were far larger in scale and number, and therefore they are the worst party in World War II. It's a way to try to whitewash and launder the reputation of Germany, Nazi Germany. A similar perspective took place in Ethan's commentary, which is the double Nakba almost. I'm Hasan Piker, and this is the Hasan broadcast. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Saturday. My hair is all crazy because I just did the Fear and podcast. I'm looking salmon. I got the Will Neff Rest in Power Died to Self-Suck shirt on. Got this at Coachella. They had them printed out for Coachella. Show the jewelry. They look cool. It's the same shit I wear all day, every day. You already know. It is it's now officially the month. I was about to say April, but it is officially the month of May. It's Saturday, May 3rd. It's gonna be May 2025, and there's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot happening in the universe. I will, of course, be talking about all that. Someone said that there's a new iDubbbz content deputy. So that's crazy. I guess we will take a look at that as well. But okay, that's wild. Okay, well, I was gonna do a debate recap, but I don't even know if we have time. There's too much is happening. Too much is happening, ladies and gentlemen, folks, boys, girls, MBs. Too much is happening. Someone said Barron Trump's doing an AMA on Discord. That's insane. But yeah, we're gonna be doing a little bit of a debate, a recap, and fun day as well. But like, come on, let's be real. You expected this to happen. I mean, I have to do a recap, right? Like, I mean, it's been fucking crazy. We had 120,000 people tuning in here yesterday, 130 almost, and another 100K on the other side. Asman Gold, like this is the thing that a lot of people actually watched. It was the most unemployed Super Bowl of all time, and obviously, I'm going to be talking about that. I'm going to be talking about some aspects of it because, like, I do feel apologetic, because I do feel, in some ways, I feel kind of sad because my goal yesterday, as you guys probably noticed, or you probably heard ahead of time, because I kept saying it over and over again, was to have a conversation around, the actual situation that matters, which is Israel's mass starvation campaign. And also, how my former podcast co-host is like handled himself throughout this process with like an endless sea of harassment, right? Endless sea of harassment towards people that don't have the same perspective that he does. And I guess the apology that I want to start off with is that, I think I should have redirected it further. I think I should have redirected the conversation back to the issues that matter a little bit further. And I think I should have, I don't know, there were on the spot moments. There were on the spot moments where I stood 10 toes down and certainly redirected the conversation. But there were definitely instances where I just like kind of let him get away with saying things and then moving on, even though he was very clearly lying about those things. And I had evidence. I had the information. I could have just pulled it up, but it was very difficult to pull up some of the information. He didn't want me to like show my side all that much. Ultimately, he did most of the work making himself look a certain way to the onlookers. But I do believe that like this is like, I believe personally, because I have a very high bar here for myself, that I wanted to clear in terms of actually getting to the issues that matter and not letting anything get away with by, saying things like that he is actually against the genocide and that he is actually admitting to it being a genocide, because his behavior did not make sense. His behavior was inconsistent. And there was also some issues that I wanted to get to, the conflation of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism that we didn't actually talk about as well. But I don't know what it looked like on the other side. I don't know what it looked like on the other side, but on my side, even when I'm looking back at the clips, like my audio was not great. So that's something that I have to also definitely take care of. When we're doing Zoom, it's impossible to fucking change the audio. So I cranked up. Wait, it's probably still blown out actually. I cranked up my gain so I could like fix my audio on my end, but like Zoom bricked it completely, which was really annoying. Lamau, audio not great, Lamau. None of that happened. You got torched in that debate. Oh, I assume that there's going to be a lot of people like this that come in today, of course, and say stuff like this. Obviously, that's not the case, and we know what you're doing, big dog. But thank you. You'll be seeing a lot of these. You know, as a longtime fan of yours, and also a person that is like totally aware of everything that's going on in Israel, I do think that you've lost me as a fan. And it's like, dude, we know what you're doing. It's fine, you know. You can keep presenting it this way, but I hope Dan heeded your message. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I don't think he did. I actually don't know. What is copium? Copium is what these people are doing in the chat when they come in to be like, can you believe Tectone acted like he had an opinion? Yeah, exactly. You will see a lot of people that have no interest in politics whatsoever, once again, who are apolitical in nature, come out against this issue. You should have come prepared with video clips. You can't just wing it again. I did. I had video clips. Yeah. What is this? There's probably a reason why all the people who think Ethan won the debate are either already committed Zionist genocide lovers or anime gaming addicts who spent the 10 years obsessing over being too many black people in video games. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, they also said similar things about Sam Cedar as well. And the Sam Cedar conversation was actually much more amicable because Ethan did not want to blow his load on him in the same way. And Sam could just easily be like, I don't care about these things, in a way that I tried to also do, but he would not give a shit. He would not let me move on to a topic that actually matters, you know? Some in Asmin's chat want you to be deported. I'm more American than they are, baby. Yeah. I think a real moderator would have made it a lot better. Dan was not really doing any moderating and had your send clips to Ethan to be on screen. Yeah. Yeah, the structure of it wasn't great. I mean, all things considered, I don't think that it was, I don't think that I did a poor job. Make no mistake. I'm just being, even in the most hypercritical, even being the most hypercritical of myself, regardless of the way that Ethan presented himself, I still wanted to do something here. And the thing I wanted to do was like not cheapen this discussion. And I basically said that last night as well in the aftermath of the debate, where I said like I felt like I prostituted myself, where I did succumb to the whims of Ethan making this about petty drama. But in terms of like getting Ethan to admit certain things that basically destroy a lot of what he had said prior. I mean, I'm diving into it. I didn't even blast off yet. Let me just blast off and then we'll get into it. But like in terms of personal news, I didn't really do much last night. I got myself some ice cream. I treated myself to some ice cream. I even got a cone. And what do you call it? I watched Fearin'. Fearin' is interesting. It's starting to finally get interesting. Did you sleep okay? Yeah, I slept like a baby. But Fearin's starting to finally get interesting because of the introduction of demons. So I have a lot of thoughts on it, but I have to keep watching to make a better assessment on what's going on, because it's like I don't normally love the pure evil dynamics, and maybe I'm misunderstanding if it's like a pure evil versus good dynamic happening there, but it is interesting, and we will take a look at it. But I can see why people see it as like fascist agitprop, because it almost feels like the poem that Donald Trump always used about immigrants, saying like this is their nature and there is not much you can do about it.
The debate.
Yeah, I saw the Chris Kunzler take on it. I might have Chris Kunzler on as well. You slept like a baby in your race car bed, which is somehow known. Yeah, I don't know why he kept saying I have a race car bed. I think he might be mistaking me with Ludwig for thinking I have a race car bed, because I think Ludwig had a race car bed when he was doing his like we really, me and the boys got together to try to figure out what was going on, you know? And I think he thinks it's a joke from The Simpsons. Oh, okay. I mean, there was a lot of moments where he was just like making erroneous claims and then walking them back and admitting to lying and smearing just to fucking move on, I think. But yeah. Anyway. Hold on. Let's blast off. New content. Hold on. Okay. Do we have a blast off meme? Zaza Demon. Yeah. There was also the moment where he was like, your head is small, which I thought was like kind of a funny introduction, because it was like in between him calling me like a vicious anti-Semite. And it's such a funny thing to be like I don't think first of all, it's not something, it's a meme in my community. You know what I mean? It's something that I've joked about. It's something that I've joked about with him. Right? So it's like, if I'm having a heated debate with like a fucking neo-Nazi, with someone who is truly an anti-Semite, I'm not going to in between shift gears to make like, I'm not going to shift gears to make jokes where it's like myself and that person have shared as a shared experience. Like, I feel like that's kind of an odd thing. That's like a very weird thing to do. His chat was reacting how you expected they be. Yeah. Anyway, let's we blasted off. Like, some of this stuff just simply doesn't make sense. If he thinks I'm like this vicious anti-Semite, worse than Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes, which is what he said, then the way he is talking to me doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? If this is the case, then he has to have more evidence than, I suspect you bought this incredibly popular anime sword that you did 2 years ago when we had a fucking podcast together as a way to be anti-Semitic. But also, as of 2 days ago, I didn't consider you to be anti-Semitic after the Sam Cedar debate. But as of this very moment, after the conversation that we had, I have now decided you are anti-Semitic. Like, that's a ridiculous assessment. Like, none of that makes sense. The way he was presenting himself basically did not make sense with the arguments that he was presenting. What's sad is the amount of drama slop tubers who clearly don't cover the genocide make YouTube vids about this debate, not highlighting the fact of how gross Ethan's comments were. Yeah, that's what's most likely going to happen. And it's ironic because, like, this is something that I was arguing against and something that I don't want, right? In terms of like all the slop tubers that cover this kind of stuff exclusively from the fuck Hasan tip. Overzealous has a really good video on this that we watched on the broadcast. It's not as odd as you think, because that was what was a direct attempt to try and find an explodable self-conscious target that would upset and tilt you, but he could describe as only a joke. That's why he devolved into calling you a liar as well. Yeah. It's I don't know. I go back and forth on thinking whether or not Ethan genuinely and legitimately thinks I'm anti-Semitic because of the way he's presented himself. I think he's just. I still land on him assuming. I mean, him hating me and then just like wanting there to be a good reason for him to hate me beyond the fact that his fan base turned on him and it hurt his feelings because they did not see him as like an intellectual beacon who had the morally correct position on Israel, Palestine. And they didn't treat him with a bit of grace and baby him through the process because the situation was direct, and the conflict in and of itself, the genocide is so severe that it's like impossible for people to not have an unnuanced and very straightforward opinion on it. And it's understandable because this is the one thing that is understandable to have a black and white perspective on, right? So that's what it is, right? Like that's I think like everything else is just seasoning on top of that, where he just wants to make this argument presentable and not come across as like selfish and obsessive. And I don't think he laid out a convincing case for that. And my goal yesterday was to first and foremost bring it back to the issues and talk about the damage that he has caused by consistently identifying pro-Palestinian content creators who have been critical of Ethan and his coverage as anti-Semites that are worthy of deplatforming through the silly things that they brought forward, through the silly things that he brought forward. He wanted to reconcile with you, but in a way that makes him look good. Basically, you doing concessions is what I got. I think he likes you, but he's hurt. No, I don't think so. I think he despises me. And he said it. See, he said as much in the conversation. He said it multiple times. What is this? Yeah, I mean, this is not even a debate tag. This is an incredibly childish thing that he did, which I think did not present him in a good light at all. So I don't know why anyone would look to this and be like, he was so composed.
What? You don't know what I'm talking about? Yeah, it was on the list. You're lying.
Yeah. I got a free Rolex hat from a friend of mine. I still wear it every now and then.
Yeah, and you're oh wow, who knew?
What? Like none of these are arguments. None of these are counter arguments. It was just like it was very interesting. Like it was basically just like childlike mockery, and I was fairly composed through it. Like I didn't really eat the bait because I think he was just trying to get something out of me in most of these situations. And if you noticed throughout the conversation, there are moments where I unwind. Okay. But if you notice, the only moments where I unwind is not when he's like calling me an anti-Semite or whatever, or doing petty drama or this kind of shit. It's when he's saying something about Israel that I think is like repulsive or inconsistent with other things that he's said about Israel that make no sense when you consider the past year-long conquest to deplatform pro-Palestinian voices. And that was the only time where I was like, dude, shut up. Like he was trying to provoke me, and I didn't really eat that at all. And I suspect maybe the ad-lib stuff was to get me to like pop back at him. I don't know why he also like made fun of me stuttering once. Like, dude, I don't make fun of you for having Tourette's. That would be ableist, right? Like that is an incredibly ableist thing to do. Even if this is like a totally different way to approach it, right? Like you're the way that you're carrying yourself is manic and crazy, not because of your Tourette's, but instead it's because of the things you're saying. And I think potentially he was trying to get me. He was trying to goad me maybe to like respond in kind, so he could be like, "You're being ableist" or something like that. At no point did he do that to Sammy. Of course not. That would look even more ridiculous. Destiny?
What?
Ethan, I don't think
Hasan?
I didn't bring up Destiny. You did.
By your authority, I will decide who's hallucinating. Hasan. Want to do propaganda, remember?
Ethan.
Hasan. Please, calm down. You're getting worked up.
I don't know why you're behaving in such a childish manner. Ethan, I don't think... Anyway, he did that a lot. But yeah, Ethan Klein, regarding the zone of interest comparison, so you're saying everyone living in Israel is living next to a concentration camp? Hasan, yes. Yeah, of course. But again, I know you are still not assuming good faith from Ethan after yesterday. You're too good, King. No, I don't. I did not even expect him to be that good faith in general. I just didn't expect how bad faith he would get. But it doesn't matter because like people who watched it, who already had preconceived notions of Israel-Palestine, that have found themselves in this unique slotting ideologically, where they think like Israel's doing a genocide, but also everyone that's resisting against said genocide are also bad. This is an interesting position that American liberals have because of the endless amount of Islamophobic sentiment, the endless amount of Western chauvinism that has been baked into their collective consciousness. Every single militancy, every single organization, every single standing military that has ever resisted against Western forces is always in the wrong until time has passed and they've maybe won some concessions or liberated their country, at which point it's appropriate. But while it's happening, while we're in the process, it's the age-old adage: liberals are for every civil rights movement except the current one. Liberals are for every single anti-war movement except the current one. And that's basically what it is. And there's a lot of weaponization of this kind of attitude from Ethan, whether inadvertently or deliberately. Yeah, people go, IDF and Hamas are in the wrong. It's not a hard concept, but it actually is an incredibly unnuanced position to take, because no, they're not both in the wrong. It's not a hard concept. One is a significantly worse group than the other, the IDF being the significantly worse group. Okay? That's it. And the reality of the matter is, many people don't want to recognize that, even though it is objectively true. The IDF is far worse a group than Hamas ever could be, whether it is the logistical prowess that they have, or even the fact that with all of the overwhelming power that they have done so much destruction to the Palestinian population, a civilian population. This is why I kept saying over and over again, this is why I kept repeating over and over again that, like, this is, like, Hamas would not exist if the IDF did not exist. Hamas would not exist if the Israeli state wasn't maintaining an apartheid state that is incredibly violent. Dude, him saying that if Anne Frank fought back or killed a Nazi would have changed his opinion of her for the worse, that was absolutely insane. I know. But even when libs decide that much later, a liberation movement was a good thing, they also whitewash it. Yeah, that too. I just got here, so sorry if you went over. Can you explain your views on permissibility of using unrelated citizens as prisoners? Did you mean it's a good war tactic? No, I'm not saying it's a good war tactic at all. I'm saying that there's no other way to take over a ship without, taking over the people that are operating on the ship. The treatment of the hostages is what matters in this situation. And yeah, it probably would have been better if they had released the ship crew beforehand. But I think the reason why they are actually taking over ships and disrupting commercial shipping and also combating against, fighting against even the American Navy that's trying to disrupt that operation thousands of miles away from the American border, by the way. The reason why I think that is, it's not the best thing to do, but it's also the only thing that they have in their arsenal. So yes, I think that ultimately, and many people will agree with this, unless they are totally operating on the boundaries of like, well, these guys are bad and wrong because they're scary and America told me so. If you look at it from the framework of like genocide and who is resisting against genocide and what they are doing within the limited powers that they have, that they absolutely would have to come to terms with the fact that what the Houthis are doing in this framework, resisting against genocide, is correct. It is morally correct, even if some of the methods actually fall short of a standard that you fall short of your own personal standards and mine as well. I hope that 14-month subscriber understands my position on this, because there is no comparison between the Israeli occupying force and Hamas, especially because Hamas is a militant resistance group against the apartheid that is maintained by the Israeli occupying force. That is the major problem. The bigotry of low expectations argument Ethan was trying to use was unbelievable. Yeah. And the reality of the matter is, no matter what happens, you will always have an upper hand when you just posture towards pre-existing social conditioning. When you say, no, these are bad guys, these are terrorists, anyone who tries to explain what they are doing will still be considered bad and wrong. You're defending terrorism. That's it. And for more people, for a lot of people who don't want to examine the situation critically, because at the end of the day, they still have some unexamined biases living in the Western world, they are always going to look at this and go, well, it is at the end of the day like scary brown guys doing stuff, and I don't kind of like that. And that leads people to this weird expectation. It leads people to this weird expectation that Israel is simultaneously committing a genocide, and maybe even you recognize that there has been an apartheid for 76 years, but you shouldn't do anything against it. You can't do anything against it. And the people that are doing something against it are actually in the wrong. They're always in the wrong, whether it's because their own personal domestic affairs are in the wrong, like they're anti-gay, or there's the pink washing that obviously Zionists engage in, the pink washing of Israel, while also simultaneously saying like, well, these guys are homophobic and bad. And it's like, yeah, these countries have not been able to have civil liberation movements because they've been under fire and under blockade or under control over other colonial powers or other regional actors that are far more powerful than they are, because they're being backed by the most powerful nation on the planet, the United States of America. This was Asman's main criticism of you. He can't conceive of the idea of kidnapping unrelated people to try to stop a genocide, mainly because he doesn't see Palestinians as human beings. Yeah, of course, like the guy who initially was banned for like 7 days because he said Palestinians are a inferior culture that deserves to be genocided, are going to wait. Hold on. Hold on. I'm DMing Chris back on TikTok. Yeah, the guy who got banned for 14 days is going to, of course, be resistant inherently to my position. The debate was emotionally exhausting to watch because Ethan reminded me all the times I had to defend myself against a narcissist. I know a lot of people also infer like their own personal hangups or shortcomings or interpersonal experiences that they've had off of this kind of thing. And I think that's ultimately very parasocial on both ends, What about how many times he pulled up a clip that proved your argument or disproved his? See, that's the other side of this. Like, what is shocking about this? What is shocking about many of the instances? I will say this. Here, if you guys want to know, like, two of the areas that I think were, I'll give you what the areas that I think were just like super dominant throughout the entire conversation, and I'll tell you what my biggest L's were. Okay, in terms of the areas where my biggest, I guess, quote unquote W's were, there are I believe around 7, if not more, instances where Ethan basically agreed to my position and even went as far as to apologize for things that he has done in the past. So that's fairly significant. Most of it was from the context nuke, and I think that that's not something to just like lightly cast aside, especially considering that this is supposed to be his pivotal work that he put a lot of effort and research into. There's also obviously many concessions he gave, which I think don't make sense when you factor in the way he has behaved in the past 15 months of this ongoing genocide. But there was also a bunch of instances where he basically admitted, yes, yeah, like I was wrong and I smeared you, which I thought was interesting. I didn't know really how to deal with that, but I don't think anybody actually cares on Team Ethan. It didn't come across like Ethan genuinely gave those concessions to you and instead only said it to move on since he kept saying he was bored of you. Yeah, but like there are so many moments where he just like instantly contradicted himself, where he was like, well, I don't Destiny directly. Okay, you talked to his podcast co-host who is engaged in a blackmail operation against people who have like come out against Destiny in his like sex pest case, right? Like, what do you mean? He uses that same community. He's his best friend. That is not like you've worked alongside him on numerous occasions, like, or even with the ADL example, like, or even the CPS call. I was like, dude, you know my position on this. I don't believe the CPS call in and of itself is appropriate. I don't think anyone should be calling CPS on you or anybody for that matter just because they don't like a content creator. But like, can you please explain to me what my role in this is? And he kept, and then he couldn't really tie it back to me in any capacity aside from, well, you a week ago pulled up a snark subreddit. So I said, okay, can you tell me who called CPS on you? And he had nothing. He had to basically admit, and this is a pivotal part of his like victimhood structure, was the fact that my fans had called CPS on him. That's what he had said, right? Like over and over again. And he somehow tried to tie it back to me. And what's interesting about that is he had to basically admit that he had no evidence whatsoever that it was actually coming from my community at all, or even the snark subreddits. So, and that was, oh, by the way, this chatter saying, honestly, your only L was calling Gila, getting him to admit Gila is a terrorist or something. No, the reason why I brought that up was to expose the double standard, to showcase Ethan's Islamophobia, Ethan's racism in this process, because it plays a big role. I don't have the attitude, and I tried to explain to him over and over again, like what Gila had done was a night raid. And the only reason why I know what that looks like, what a night raid looks like, and what the actual express purpose of the Israeli occupying force is in conducting those night raids is because of Breaking the Silence. Breaking the Silence is an Israeli philanthropic organization, an Israeli organization that works against the occupation. And it's comprised entirely of former Israeli occupying force veterans. So, of course, I have interviewed people who have been a part of the Israeli occupying force, as well as interviewed people that have been conscientious objectors. So I don't actually hold people's social conditioning when they're young against them. I think that would be silly. It is entirely the opposite of my worldview. It goes against my worldview. I believe everyone can change their attitude. Everyone can change their mentality. My frustration was twofold. One, that he, on the one hand, washed that aside by saying she was 19, it's forced mandatory conscription, but then also simultaneously would turn around and smear a dude and call him a fucking terrorist, which a lot of people still keep claiming over and over again. If you want to get it right, you can get it right. I don't have an issue with, even if he was a Houthi, I would not have an issue with interviewing him, for the record, as I've said over and over again. But yeah, I know you were trying to say can you call Rashad a terrorist, for instance, but not Hila, to get him to understand the double standard, but it seems like you were just trying to call Hila a terrorist, I think. No, because I did say exactly those words, but I guess it gets lost in the conversation when the impact point is getting Ethan to say that his wife could be considered a terrorist just to move on. What is this? Getting love on TikTok?
Hasan.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of that, but it doesn't matter. I think he has been using Judaism as a shield to deflect any criticism of his beliefs, and him calling you anti-Semitic is going to mean nothing when it's used against actual legitimate anti-Semites. Yeah. Yeah, and he asked me how I feel about that as well, and I tried to explain to him, like, I don't hold people's past actions against them as long as they have learned and have grown from their previous positions, because I understand, as someone who lives in the Western world, as someone who lives in America, I understand how powerful social conditioning is. I understand how someone who's 18 years old will join the Israeli Defense Force from their perspective, right? I get that. I totally understand that. I understand how someone can find themselves in that position, but through the cruelty of their actions, like, they should recognize that this is wrong, or at least 10, 20 years down the line, they don't still maintain the position that what they did was good and that still continuously defend the Israeli occupying force. That's my issue. And for people who say, why don't you just like off the rip call her a terrorist or anything like that, I need you to understand something. Like, I'm talking, first of all, I'm talking to an audience of primarily Westerners who don't even care about the issue at hand, who simultaneously consider this to be a genocide because it is, but also only care about the drama aspect of it, revolving around a content creator and his own personal feelings. So clearly, in order to try to pierce that veil, in order to try to penetrate into their collective consciousness, like there is a way to go about it. Yeah, all of this just don't kidnap innocent people talk. Did Ethan Klein not admit to partaking in an illegal raid that led to the kidnapping of innocent people, or did I dream that? Yeah, that's like, he was like, well, we don't know what they did. We don't know what the person did. And it's like, well, the point is they're not supposed to be there at all. So even if that person had like, it doesn't make sense within the logical confines that Ethan has cultivated, where he believes that, according to international law, that settlers are valid military targets, but also simultaneously, it is totally justifiable to do a raid on a Palestinian home because who knows, maybe they actually, exercised a valid military target? Is that, exercise violence against a valid military target? Like, that doesn't make sense. That is an inconsistency that he never has to address. And that is what I was trying to get him to address. Do you understand? Because if you believe that settlers are valid military targets, you also have to believe that the illegal occupation of the West Bank is completely, unconditionally unjustifiable, and therefore any kind of military action that you take against someone who is exercising their international human rights law of militant resistance against a valid military target, as he has said, then, that's illegal. It's the actions not of the Palestinian in that situation are illegal. The actions of the Israeli occupying force are illegal. Do you think they'll ever stop with this ongoing bullshit? No, because I think this is like about view counts for him in general. People even leftists seem to be struggling with the conversation around sexual assault in relation to the conflict. So those are the two L's that I'm gonna talk about. One, the conversation revolving mass sexual assault, systematic sexual assault directed by Hamas. I will be talking about that extensively. And then the other conversation that I think got lost in the weeds was, I feel like we talked past one another on the Avi Shlaim point, on the point about the Nakba being compared to expulsion and also voluntary migration of Jewish people from surrounding Arab nations. And I think on that one, we definitely talk past one another. And I want to like go back and relitigate it, or I want to go back and understand Ethan's position, because I think one of the main points of contention here always is the fact that Ethan will present something. Ethan will present my position in the worst possible framework to make it seem as though I don't believe certain things that he's bringing forward. And the reality of the matter is there's never been a moment where I have denied that there has not been expulsions of Jewish people or pogroms of Jewish people, especially in the aftermath of 1948, especially in the aftermath of the Nakba. This is something that I have talked about as well over and over and over again. But the problem, but the problem with the Ethan's framework wasn't that there's two problems with Ethan's framework. One, that he believes that I'm denying that Jews were harmed in this process in surrounding Arab nations. I'm not denying that at all. What I'm simply stating is that the trigger point of this all is the Nakba, which is a planned and executed deliberate ethnic cleansing campaign, which is done by one singular ideology, as opposed to the reaction of that from surrounding Arab nations cannot be attributed, cannot be compared to one another, especially when you factor in the reality that some of these surrounding Arab nations and MENA nations weren't even autonomous at that point. They were literally under the rulership of Vichy France at a certain point, or they were literally under the rulership of or under the control of England at a certain point. So the notion that these countries had this organic or collective, hive-minded anti-Semitism that manifested and exploded is utterly ridiculous in comparison to a planned and deliberate mass expulsion campaign. And the Palestinians had nothing to do with the surrounding Arab nations in any way, shape, or form, regardless. These are totally separate countries. But the reality of the matter is, he could not see beyond the fact that they were Arabs. He could not see beyond the fact that these are all Arab nations and they were all Arabs that did this. It was the anti-Semitism of Arabs that caused Jews to become Zionist, which I think is ridiculous. He was reacting as if trauma is binary, yes, no, rather than realizing the scale and scope of these things are vastly different, as well as avoid talking about who was responsible for the infliction of those traumas as well. Yeah. And I think a bastardization of Avi Shlaim's perspective to drive home that point, because he got someone to basically clip from his latest book and his commentary key points that make it seem as though Avi Shlaim's ultimate perspective is that Arabs were forced to become Zionist is I think a great misunderstanding of a historian that has spent most of his work talking against that. His big point is, you know how there's a double Holocaust or a double genocide theory that a lot of neo-Nazis immediately implemented in the aftermath of World War II? This is known by scholars of history as the double genocide theory, that the USSR also did a genocide, and actually their genocides were far larger in scale and number, and therefore they are the worst party in World War II. It's a way to try to whitewash and launder the reputation of Germany, Nazi Germany. A similar perspective took place in Ethan's commentary, which is the double Nakba almost.